Hi, I'm Angus Gillespie, your host for Old Ways in New Jersey. I'm here with Professor Robert Ramos, who is a musicologist from the Rutgers Graduate School and the Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers University. He's been the instructor for Music in the Caribbean course for Latino and Hispanic Caribbean Studies Department ever since 2009. Sponsored by the Center for Latino Arts and Culture, he's managed and performed with the Rutgers Salsa Band in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. A drummer and percussionist, he currently performs and records in various musical styles. And it's my pleasure to welcome him to our studio today. So Bob, tell us, what do you like most about playing music?
Well, I would say, Angus, like bringing people together and creating a space full of celebration and where people can come together. I feel like that's what art is supposed to do, is bring people together in a positive experience.
And what inspired you to get a start in this business?
I think it was a hyperactive child. So, they set me loose on the pots and pans and broke the Tupperware and all that stuff, and eventually got a drum, and then from there it was, the rest is history, right?
And tell us a little bit about the creative process when you're writing new music.
So the interesting thing is, right, so as a drummer, so I'm a drummer percussionist, and as a drummer, you can obviously be part of the creative process, which is what I prefer, or you can play for other artists, and our role is complementary.
So back them up.
Right. So I not in a original music situation at this moment, but I do some folkloric work with a couple of different people, but mostly it's cover music in one form or another.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Well, we have a number of drums here. Perhaps we should start with the African talking drum. I understand that the whole idea is you can regulate the pitch by squeezing.
Yes, and as a treat, we have two, so we can demonstrate what I like to affectionately call the 10 characteristics of African-based music. Of course, there are probably much more than that, but that's kind of an easy thing to remember. Once upon a time, I took a class in Afro-musicology at Rutgers, and so what we're going to do, a little call and response, which is like a typical thing in African music form. So, for instance, and the whole idea about the talking drum is that it has two heads and a system of ropes that help tighten and loosen the heads, so that in effect, yours is much better, you can approximate the pitch of an African language. So that's why they call it the talking drum. So, yeah, give it a little squeeze.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, now you try.
Wow. It actually changes pitch.
Yes. Yeah. And so as I say, it approximates the language in the Central and West African areas, and
it imitates the human voice.
Yes, and for the purpose of can be communication between people, but it can be communication between the spirit world as well. So which brings us into sort of like this religious drumming aspect.
let's talk more about religious drum. You have one from Cuba?
I do, in fact, right? So very, very similar in shape, right? And to the two heads, similar in shape. We have a system of drums called the Bata drums. So this is the baby drum. So there's a larger mama drum and a middle-size papa drum and the baby drum, right? So these are, so instead of having the pitch control, you have size control. So instead, so you need now, a drum family, if you will, to make the same pitches. So you have a head here, a head here,
and
a head
different.
And they all sound different, right? And there's various different ways to play them. So this is what people might have knowledge of Santeria or such, which is an Afro-Catholic syncretized religious practice, which happened during colonization. So African people might still call to their orishas underneath the guise of a particular Catholic saint. And particular to my story is that the Catholic colonizers, for whatever reason, allowed Africans their drum.
That was very clever.
Yes.
Because they sort of co-opted and they incorporated African beliefs into Catholicism.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Rather than try and stomp it out.
Well, they did. They did try. They did try.
They co-opted.
Yeah. So they found a way to kind of sneak it underneath, which is, a survival technique that is useful.
And then what about the Cuban bongos?
So the Africans were had to recreate their world right when they came over to America and the Caribbean. So the first drums that were created in the New World, let's say, these bongos, right? So, and I brought these in because they're longer than the normal style. So they represent from a style of Cuban music called shangui, so these are bongo del monte. So these are bongos from the mountain. And they are from a precursor to son. And son and mambo and danzón and all these other great forms of music that came from Cuba lead us into salsa, which is the thing that most people know about.
Yeah, in my courses, I often talk about how African music got to the Caribbean and then to the southern United States. It's a 1, 2, 3 progression.
Right. Which is like how we met, right? In New Orleans. We met in New Orleans, right?
So moving along, the Cuban Boku drum is it kind of a frame drum?
Well, so this would be the Boku right here.
It's very tall.
It's tall, and the funny thing about it,
It's kind of the same shape.
it's at a conical shape.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's a Brazilian also makes a drum similar to this one. So the interesting thing, and you'll relate to this too, right? So growing up, watching I Love Lucy, right? Desi Arnaz, singing Babalu, right? Which is Babaluaye, right? Which is Saint Lazarus, right? So that is an African orisha that is in correlation with Saint Lazarus. So you're hearing like Santeria and songs and chants, in 1950s television, right? #1 show. And I kept looking at, because I was just totally drawn to the drums my whole life. I was like, I never saw anything like that. I was like, what is that? And I'll just pick it up so that everyone can kind of see. It is long, and it's conical, and it has a. What it is for parading, marching, processional type music. So you wear this much like Ricky Ricardo would wear it and sing Babalu. And so this is typical on the eastern side of the island. So in Santiago particularly.
If it's on the eastern side, maybe it came from Haiti.
That's That's another very good connection. So this particular drum is in fact, Afro-Haitian Cuban thing, right? So it's a frame drum, and it shows the roping system that was more typical. There was a peg and rope system more typical to the drums of Haiti than in other places. And then, of course, after the Haitian Revolution, people went to New Orleans, to the eastern side of Cuba, and other places, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.
You've done work with Cuba, I've done work with Haiti, and
sure, and they're very close. Yeah, they're very close.
So, moving on, currently, who's the ideal musician you'd like to collaborate with?
Oh, huh. Well, I'm enjoying the artists that I'm working with currently. I work with one of my best friends in the world, Sharif Hobley, and his band is Sharif and Burgundy. So we do a thing. I play with Joe Boris. So I can play drums. I can play also like hand percussion. So that sort of lends itself well to sort of the jam band type classic blues rock that Joe does.
You mentioned before living and working in the New Brunswick area,
right.
But you also make trips often to Chincoteague.
Right. So we've done it once already with Joe Boris, and we have like 4 or 5. I think it's going to be an ongoing concern where we go down there and we have like rock star weekends.
It's charming. Yeah.
It's great. It's a nice little place, and they're very welcoming, and we look forward to our next time down.
So, what's your favorite venue for performing?
My favorite venue, I think any venue that has like a stage and monitors and a nice audience, that a well receptive, happy, energetic audience is home, because that's the setup wherever it is you take it, So I've had a handful of pretty nice gigs in some nice places, and I've of course seen shows all my life. So that's a hard one.
Is it easier on a stage than in a club?
Well, a club might have a stage, so that's a good club. A good club has a stage, and and as you look around, how many monitor guys are there? Do you have a front of the house, back of the house? Yeah. It grows from there, right? So, yeah.
So, what skills have you gained along the way that enable your performance as a musician?
Well, I would say, and this is so I do teach private drum lessons, and I like to tell people in my college classes and my private lessons that anything that you do, like playing an instrument, learning an instrument, for me it's the drums. Like can be a sincere, legitimate source of confidence that you can then take into every other part, of your life. So just putting in that time, rehearsing, practicing, getting together, listening is a big skill.
And I guess you have to make the time. You can't just find the time.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. Your favorite performance of all time, what really clicked?
Wow. Well, I've been blessed. I would say I could go on. Geez. But I would say the very first show that you always say, it's.
Okay, I can do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first show I saw was a band called The Police, and it was me and my high school buddies from my band, and we went. It was an amazing time, and the drummer Stuart Copeland was the main person that led me into sort of exploring, world music and drumming and sounds and music and people from around the world that you should, get to know.
He opened the door.
He opened the door.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. As did, so my parents also, another great show was when I turned 21, I went to see Tito Puente at the Blue Note. And that sort of, again, set me on the path. And again, was like, opened the door to this other world for me. Yeah.
Let me turn it around. Do you remember your worst performance? What went wrong? And what did you learn from it?
What did I learn from it? Probably that you should, well, first of all, I've blacked out. I've blacked out all of the bad performances.
That's fair.
No. I would say, you want to be confident and be in control. I think that's what I learned. Like you want to control as much of the situation as you can. Because there's obviously some things that you can't control. So for as much as you can, you should try to,
You project confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
And you also want to project happiness and that it's a good time. Like, so if you were to make a mistake or something, like, don't dwell on it. You keep moving, because music is an art form that moves through time and space, so it's gone, and maybe it's not a mistake depending on what you do next, right? If you're Miles Davis.
It was improvisation.
Right, exactly. Another one of the characteristics, right, of African-based music.
What qualities do you think make for a great musician?
Qualities. I would say, again, all those same things, like you hear the call, you hear the calling, you spend loving time with it. It fascinates you. You want to make these connections with other people. And as I say to my students that are, studying drums and such, it can literally open so many doors for you, like for scholarship opportunities, to meet friends. Like for me, it was, it's easy to go anywhere if you want to travel. It's the language of music. If the language of speaking does not work somewhere, there's the language of playing. So it's great to be able to travel and get scholastic opportunities. So I would say, keep practicing, kids.
Yeah. And I think, Bob, you've reached a stage in your career, if I dare say, you're mature. Have you trained younger musicians, and what do you do to help them?
So what I've found, yes, I do, and I've found that there's not necessarily only one way to do something. So you could, if somebody's not understanding a particular concept, like this way, well, let's try it from here, right? Or let's break it down into smaller pieces and then put it together, right? So we could either try from different places, we start from different places, we talk about from different angles, right? But we wind up at the same place eventually. And it's a wonderful, very rewarding moment when it clicks for somebody. So when you can help somebody.
In your teaching, are you working with children? Are you working with young adults?
All stripes of person, So I have, at Rutgers, I have college-age students, and then in the private lessons, they can be very young and they can be adult.
What's the best piece of advice you ever got from a senior musician yourself?
Best piece of advice. I think to be open to opportunities, and to listen, and this is tough for me, but less is often more. When you're in an ensemble setting, you want to be able to listen and hear what each of the other player is saying, right? And to be able to support that, but also to answer and also to respond. So listening is a big part.
I know when I first became a teacher, a good piece of advice I got was my first boss told me, well, the secret for good teaching is preparation. So maybe you could say the same for music.
I would say that is right. Yes, preparation, perspiration, all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
When I go into a class, I need to know what I'm going to say. You go to a concert, you need to know what you're going to play.
Right. But within that context, there's still a little wiggle room, right? And often,
You have to improvise.
you have to, right. You have to improvise and put in some current events, or like, especially sometimes the kismet comes together, and you can draw on your body of knowledge to communicate any kind of like in the moment idea.
Another thing I'm eager to ask you, how do you deal with performance anxiety? The concert's about to begin.
Right.
Oh, do you worry? Or how do you deal with worry?
Or the class, right? Or you're walking into a class of 100 people or whatever. I will say what you have just said. So preparation there is the key, and again, like achieving certain levels of success. So, you learn a song, you play it properly, then you can kind of tuck that away as something that you know how to do, right? So every successful, club date that gets bigger or bigger, and then you're finally playing in front of thousands of people. Like, how do you do that? Well, first you play in front of hundreds of people, and you do that well, and then so then playing in front of thousands is just the same big deal as before.
You tell yourself, I know what I'm doing. This should go okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're there to be the excuse to, open up this fun moment, right? Where people can, for that time, kind of focus on something different and go to this special place where music is, taking them away from the everyday problems of life.
I know that, Bob, currently you are pretty well established. You're a professor at Rutgers. You have local gigs. But was there a time when you were on the road, and how did you deal with that?
It was a fun, important time of my life where we were in a band. It was with Joe and myself and some other really good friends of mine. Where we took a bus, it took like it looked like the Partridge Family bus, okay? And we drove that across country and played a bunch of dates in California. So that was like a treasured moment for sure.
What was it stressful? Did you have to stay in dumpy hotels?
Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But that's a real long story. I mean, we sort of had an inn with a number of places, and wound up staying at Clarence Clemens's townhouse in Sausalito. So that was great. I mean, it was like,
It gave you a West Coast base.
Right. For that time, and we would take. Sometimes we would. There was another time we flew out and we rented gear. So there's all different ways to do it, right? But yeah, it's nice to have a bed now. As you get older, it's nicer to have a bed.
Tell me about your very first music teacher. How did that go?
So this was good, which kind of takes us back to the marching thing, and processional, religious and semi-religious processional music. So my very first teacher's name was Mike Mazzarisi, and he was hired from my high school to kind of whip our marching band into shape so that we could compete on a higher level. And I also started taking private drum lessons from him, and brought me down to his basement. He's like, here, put on these sunglasses. So you had to put on these sunglasses before you could go into the room. You open the door, and it's drums from one end to the other, just like like chrome, blinding, eight toms across. It's like an old 70s setup, double bass drum, and just tiny little drum here, all the way to like super big old drum down here, and so that was interesting to walk into that and have that. So I play left-handed also, and so I had to learn, especially in those early days. There's no way to move a drum set like that around. Like with a small jazz kit, you can get away with like, okay, move the hi-hat from one side to the other because your feet are doing something too, right? So I had to learn right-handed to play left-handed, which, maybe helped me in the end, but was twice as hard.
A challenge, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever participated in music competitions? And did you win any prizes?
I did not. Other than the marching band thing, where we did sort of travel, but I don't think we ever placed in the top 3. And we didn't really do it that much, but it was fun. And it was a good experience. But no, nothing like that. I've made 15 albums with different bands. So that's kind of a highlight, and I love the recording process. I love playing live, but I love the recording process. So you leave a record of your existence on this planet.
When you're doing live gigs,
right,
do you offer DVDs for sale afterwards?
Often, yeah. I mean, bands do what they can, and there's you'll have merch. Some people have shirts or something, but I've been around long enough, right, to see all the changes. And just last night, I was at a talk in New York, and the guy was kind of joking about like, I have a new CD coming out, and no one has a CD player anymore. So he's like, well, you could use it as a coaster. Yeah. Take it and use it as a coaster. So everyone's online now. Like all the music is online at this point. So.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for coming out to East Brunswick today. It's a pleasure talking with you, and thanks a lot for sharing all your drum knowledge.
I treasure this moment, and I'm happy to come back and talk to you about any other topic that might come up. These are predominantly Afro-Cuban drums, but we could do Puerto Rico, we could do Dominican Republic, we could do all kinds of stuff. So a good friend of mine plays steel pan. So he comes into my class, music of the Caribbean. So it's a great adventure. It's a great adventure, and I thank you for having me.